The Devils is Joe Abercrombie's newest book, and it's his biggest venture away from his normal genre, his normal style that he's ever made. The question is, has he pulled it off? In this video, I'm just going to talk about my first thoughts, and I'm going to give like a live reaction because I haven't actually finished the book yet. Because I know this has had like a slightly more mixed reception than a lot of his other books, and that's because of his venture away from his normal, style, his normal genre. I thought it would be interesting to give my real-time reaction to the book at halfway and then give a full end of book reaction at the end and kind of see how it changes, see how my opinions of characters, of the plot, of the book changes. And yeah, I thought that might be an interesting thing to do because with shows and stuff, we have reaction channels. With books, we just get end of book reactions for the most part. So in this video, I'm going to just give a brief summary of the book, and then I'm going to talk about whether I like or dislike it, what works, what doesn't, and then I'm going to go into spoilers. There won't be spoilers at the start. So Joe Abercrombie is one of my favourite authors. I've actually only read his First Law trilogy, and I read those about a couple months ago, and I told myself at the end, I'm not going to read any more fantasy for a while because I was starting writing my book and I wanted to read more widely, read different genres to help that. But I just couldn't stay away. I saw that he'd released this new book, and I really wanted to just dive into more Joe Abercrombie stuff. I love his style. I love his characters. And the question is, has he managed to adapt his style and his characters and the things that make him really good? Has he managed to adapt that to his new style, his new kind of slightly shifted genre? One of the biggest ways he changes from his original style and genre is that this is a lot more comedic. Now, there were obviously kind of aspects of comedy in his previous books. This one kind of leans into the comedy a lot more. And I think that might be a reason why people sometimes might not be really gelling with it as well. If the comedy style is not your fit, then you're not going to be enjoying this book. Or you're probably going to have a hard time enjoying it because it really does lean into the comedy. The good thing is I love the comedy in this book. Maybe it's because I'm British and he's British and it's kind of the same sort of humour, but it really has landed for me. I'm laughing every other page. I think it's just so cleverly written. The characters play with each other so well. And that's really one of the strongest points of the book for me. Now, another way that he differs in this book to his other books is that the setting is not a purely made-up world. It's actually kind of based in our history, in European history, and then it's kind of a modified, bastardized version of European history with like certain places that existed at certain times still being there, but it's like an alternate history, And then he brings in the fantasy elements, the fantasy creatures, which weren't really that present in the First Law. But what's interesting is he doesn't just use a cookie cutter approach of fantasy creatures and stuff like that. He really subverts what we're used to with these creatures. And he does it so well, and it creates really good humor and really good, like, just a different vision of these things that people are used to in fantasy. And that kind of keeps it nice and fresh, keeps it, enjoyable, really. And then with the plot is a lot more simple, I would say, than something like your First Law trilogy. It's kind of just a travelogue, really. And it's following your core group of characters. There's multiple POVs as usual, but this time they're kind of a lot more condensed, a lot less spread out. It's not like a sort of Game of Thrones where you have stories in different corners of the world. It's really like a really focused and minute story with intricate and personal character relationships and things like that. And I think that's really what he's good at. So I'm quite happy that he's lent into that. So overall for me, the best bits of this book are the comedy and the dialogue between characters and the characters themselves, which basically is what Joe Abercrombie is good at. He's so good at characters. And then beyond those things, his prose is just so good. It's so well written, so much comedy, so much flair, so much, uniqueness in the way he describes things that you read it and he's written it, right? And not only that, but with the character voice as well, he does that so masterfully. You pick up a new chapter and within a few lines, you know whose chapter it is because of the word choice, because of the sentence length, everything he does, because of like the pomposity and like the, grandiose nature of some characters. And then they're like, sheltered within themselves, unconfident other characters. He really distinguishes between them really well, and it makes it so entertaining. So that's kind of my brief overview, no spoilers, what I'm thinking so far. I think it's a good book. I'm enjoying it a lot. I'm excited to carry on reading it. I can kind of see where some people maybe won't like it, and I wonder how my opinion is going to change with the rest of the book. But yeah, now I'm going to get into, at first I won't say spoilers, I'm just going to, talk about the characters a bit more, talk about, their names, who they are, and what I like about them. So if you don't want spoilers, then click off now. So your group of characters. My favourite characters so far, probably because of the comedy, are Balthazar and Baron Rickard. I just find every scene that they're in, every bit of dialogue that they offer to be so just snappy and fun, and Balthazar makes me laugh more than any other character. I guess he is more the comic relief sort of character, but he has more to him than that, which is what I like. I love how his heightened opinions of himself are so well contrasted against how other people see him, and like basically against reality. That's just done so funny, so humorously, so well. And kind of the contrast of like having the Pope being this 10-year-old girl and her being more powerful than him, and him coming to terms with that is so funny. And then with Baron Rickard, what I love about him is his so consistent, his kind of posh, grandiose, well-spoken manner, his superior kind of attitude, all of his like witty little remarks are so funny. He kind of is used in kind of small chunks here and there, just in moderation, and that's what makes him work for me. I feel like if there was loads of him, maybe it would be less entertaining, but I really like whenever he kind of pipes up, is so funny. And then beyond them, a less comedic character but still really good is your knight, your Jacob of Thorn. He seems a lot more deep, and I really like what Abercrombie's done with his character. It's kind of an intriguing twist on the classic kind of gruff, wants to retire knight sort of thing, like an old man who doesn't want to be there but is. And Abercrombie kind of stretches that as far as he can go with like the oath and the details of the character. The other main characters, Brother Diaz and Alex, they're kind of your fish out of water sort of thing, and they're funny as well. I love Brother Diaz and I love Alex. I think they're kind of, you need that kind of human element of it to make this work. Otherwise it would be too kind of wacky, kind of too ridiculous, and they kind of make it a lot more readable, a lot more, they kind of earth it, bring you back to earth, bring you back into the story when it's getting a bit too wild, So yeah, the biggest risk that I think he took was making this a lot more comedic than the last ones, and a bit less kind of grimdark. I don't even know if you'd consider this grimdark anymore. It's kind of like grim but funny, and light but dark. It's a kind of weird mixture of everything. But that risk for me has paid off completely. I am having such a blast with this book. Maybe it's not as like tense and you're not as drawn in as maybe you are with something like Glockter in the First Law and Logan in the First Law. But I think I'm just as entertained. I think I'm having a lot more of a light-hearted, really good time than those ones were quite a bit more deep and a bit more tense at certain points. And I guess this one has some tension, but it hasn't had that much yet. The setting was another big change, and I really like what he's done here. It's so fresh from everything I've read in fantasy. I know it's not a completely new concept, but the based on a real world but twisted is such a cool idea, and the way he does it is so well. I'm really enjoying going to different locations which are true in the world and seeing what he changes about them. And then the plot, this is something that I know people probably have gripes with, is how simple it is, and I can see that becoming a problem potentially with like a long book, and particularly if, as I believe this is going to be a trilogy, that might become a problem if it doesn't become more complex. But I can see him handling it better than that. I think it's going to become more complex, and luckily for now, the characters and their relationships and the comedy and the prose are really carrying it. And then just one last thing about the prose. I just think, as someone who's just started writing, I'm taking so much inspiration from this. I'm reading every page and I'm trying to stop myself from highlighting, and I'm reading it on Kindle, so like highlighting every other line, because it's just got a unique way of writing something. I think when you start writing, you kind of notice these things a bit more, because there are things where I'm like, I tried to write that kind of scene or something happened, but I couldn't think of like a not boring way to write it. And then I read this and I'm like, oh my God, I would never get there to like that way that he's written it, but it's so effective. So I'm having a blast reading it and like taking so much and learning so much from what I think is a master of, intricate, fun prose, starting on a really minute level and then kind of zooming out. I think Joe Abercrombie does it so well. And that's why he's so good at characters, because you really get in their head and then he kind of zooms out. So yeah, that's my thoughts. And now I'm going to just talk about my favorite parts. This is like proper spoilers, but obviously it's still the first half of the book, so it's not what's going to happen in the book or anything. But yeah, the intro to the book is so well done. It's really like a masterclass in how to start a book, set the scene, build a few characters. Brother Diaz and Alex, you're like, oh, it's just humans, but it's funny how they're written. It's funny how they're introduced. You really get a feel for the world and the really religious kind of side of it. So another one of my favorite scenes is the introduction to the crew and like the monsters, or, the other characters basically. This is really a moment where you're thrown in at the deep end. You're told this story isn't exactly how you expected it to be. Even though they've alluded to the use of fighting fire with fire and stuff, this kind of shocks you because they're not just monsters or whatever. They're really unique, really strong personalities, and they subvert the tropes, like I said earlier. Their introduction and using Brother Diaz as like a way to see that is so funny. And I love, Balthazar, he's in his cell thinking so highly of himself, but he's there naked and pathetic. And the introduction of Baron Rickard is so good, with him being Brother Diaz is like told, stay away from the cell, stay away from the cell. And he kind of realizes he's getting closer and closer. He's like, was that ensorcelment? Were you ensorceling me just now? And it's just so funny. Like, I love Baron Rickard. I think he's so good. And then, yeah, obviously the elf, and then you get the werewolf later on. But that scene is so well done to just throw Brother Diaz in at the deep end as your like surrogate, and you're therefore thrown in. And yeah, that's just done so well. Then beyond that, I loved the inn scene when Vigor's kind of like revealed. The werewolf eventually comes out. It all goes to shit, and eventually they're saved at the last moment by Vigor. And this is also the reveal of Jacob of Thorn being immortal. I think that's done so well. His curse and his oath and all these things are handled so well, and they add loads of intrigue to the character. And in this scene as well, I liked Balthazar actually using his powers and showing that he's not just a joke. And his powers are so fun, like necromancy, and the way it's described with these dead guards coming up and like wandering around farting and shit. He uses lots of childish, I guess you would say, humor, like slapstick kind of thing, but he deals with it so well, and it really just does land for me. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's just delivered well, and that works for me. So yeah, that's my best scenes, my favorite characters. Genuinely, this has been a great book so far for me. I love the setting, the characters, the dialogue is really the best bit. The parts when the group is kind of playing off one another. I think the weakest parts have been when they're not. Like in the Illusions house, I kind of felt like it slowed down a bit. I feel like some people might enjoy it, and we definitely got a view into the characters, and it was introspective and it was needed to deepen the characters. But at that point, I maybe saw the weakness where before it was maybe being carried by the dialogue between the characters, and now without that, it slows down a bit. But I still think this is a great book, and I'm really excited to finish it and to see how my opinions change. Yeah, I'm going to say it's probably about an 8 out of 10 for me. So there's going to be a full review coming when I finish the book. I'm also going to put some content out about the first law, reviews of that, maybe some character analysis, some writing tips based on it. I'm going to do some real deep reading into it and see what I can get, because as someone who is writing in a kind of adjacent sort of genre, I want to learn so much from who I think is a master of this genre. And yeah, I want to share whatever I learn. So thanks for watching.